what if, based off what I was told, Dont'e Thornton was forced down their throat to play slot receiver? And that was even the narrative when he signed with Tennessee. If you remember early, we all thought slot receiver from the get. What if that's not his best fit? I look at the man, he's 6'5". That doesn't look like his best fit. I think of a little shifty guy. What if
it's
shoved down his throat? How much does that help Kelsey Popes?
that really helps his case. It's funny you say that because when Dont'e Thornton was signed, I thought slot receiver, and I thought created in a lab to. Well, I'm not creating a lab. Excuse me. I thought Kevin Durant going to the Warriors was him going to this offense, honestly, and playing in the slot. I mean, a 6'5" guy who I was told had everything Squirrel White had, just 6 more inches. And so
right,
that would shock me a lot. Now, I mean, this is intriguing. This is very intriguing if you're telling me this, but also it's very alarming because it's another knock against Josh Heupel's talent evaluation.
Well, but I think people, and I thought you might say that, I think people make mistakes all the time. I think that he might have needed him because he felt good about Brew McCoy. He felt good about, the young man, Ramel Keaton. He felt good about what he had on the outside. So maybe this is a way to motivate Squirrel. I think people I don't think they're huge, disastrous decisions, but I think coaches make decisions with the way they handle their team all the time. I think of a smaller receiver in the slot. Jalen Hyatt looked bigger than he was, but he was 6 feet when he was measured at the combine, but he looked like a long strider. He looked like a tall receiver. So we kind of thought Dont'e Thornton would be that, but mostly don't we think of smaller receivers that are shifty? And I think of those Edelman types that it seems like Tom Brady had for a long time at the slot receiver position.
Yeah, we absolutely do.
I guess when I think slot receiver, I don't think Jalen Hyatt streaking down the field, and that's great. Do more of that if you can, Tennessee. But I think more of a guy that moves the chains.
No, I mean, I'm with you on that. I'm totally with you on that with Jalen Hyatt. With the slot receiver. I think that they maybe were trying to recreate Jalen Hyatt then, from what you're saying.
Yep.
That's what they were trying to do, which I think is a mistake because, I mean, that's Josh Heupel should know. He's run different systems. I mean, he's relied on weapons differently every year as offensive coordinator. So it's weird that he would try to do that, quite honestly.
Well, I guess after 2022, you probably adjust your thinking a little bit, how much success you had there, and you probably adjust your thinking for the next year and how you game plan a little bit because everything went just so darn good. It'll be this day in Tennessee sports history, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I think Dont'e Thornton will be the comeback player of the year for Tennessee's football team, and I'm going to ask Caleb to pick somebody else. The comeback player of the year brought to you by our friends at Boundless Moving. They had me coming back to Knoxville from their 2-hour minimum to turnkey operations. They've got you covered. Boundless Moving is unbelievable. In East Tennessee, tell them Off the Hook Sports sent you. They're also in Charlotte, so the North Carolina area. If Heath ever decides to move over to Knoxville, he already has. But your candidate for comeback player of the year, is there one that stands out there, Caleb?
Well, since we're transitioning to this Dont'e Thornton topic, I mean, Brew McCoy seems like he'd be the most obvious comeback player of the year, right? Because of his season-ending injury. But let's talk a little bit about this. Do you think they've realized what they have in Thornton now and that he should move back to wideout and that he could be a rare talent there if they use him right?
Yes. I think you'll have a stretch the field wide receiver like Alvin Harper, former Vol was for the Cowboys. And I think you'll have a possession type of receiver in Michael Irvin that is surprisingly gifted athletically. Irvin ran away from people, but people don't think of him like that.
And Brew McCoy is like that, is what you're saying.
Yeah, Brew McCoy will run away from people like that. Sorry, just to pick my favorite team, the Cowboys. But Brew McCoy will run away from more people than you think. But you'll think of him compared to Thornton as a stretch the field receiver. You'll think of him as a possession receiver, which is almost an insult to Brew McCoy. But
well, interestingly enough that you say that, Brew McCoy, you could actually go more. You don't even have to go Cowboys or your favorite team. You just go back to Tennessee, which also had Alvin Harper because Alvin Harper was one side and Carl Pickens was on the other side. And
It's true.
Brew McCoy could be now Carl Pickens. I don't know if he was a possession receiver. I mean, he was a defensive back first, so he was actually an athlete before he was a receiver. But Carl Pickens was the go-to guy, right? And then Alvin Harper stretched the field, and you might have that with Brew McCoy and Dont'e Thornton. That's a scary thought. Which, by the way, it's I hear all the time how Philip Fulmer turned around the offense when he took over as offensive coordinator in 1989, and then I go and look back and I'm like, yeah, Alvin Harper, Carl Pickens, and Chuck Webb. You should have turned around the offense. So I don't know if it'll be that loaded, but it could be pretty loaded next year.
Now,
and Brew McCoy is a rare talent.
Now, from somebody else I talked to at practice, does it surprise you that Braylon Staley, the 4-star prospect from South Carolina, has received the most time at slot receiver extensively, along with Squirrel White? That mostly, and I'm just going to throw this all at you, tell me what may surprise you or what may not, but that Thornton mostly on the outside, and but actually, I was a bit surprised by Staley, the 4-star prospect from South Carolina, working at receiver a little bit more than the transfer from Tulane, Brazel, because he's playing outside and inside. So, no pun intended. It looks like that Staley may have a little bit of an inside track on getting that inside receiver position at the slot. That surprised you at all?
It tells me that if they're trying Braylon Staley and they tried Dont'e Thornton last year, why that they for some reason have a lack of respect for Squirrel White, which is alarming. Why are they trying to find options beyond Squirrel White at slot so desperately?
I think it's the opposite. I think they like him so much that they think that he may be gone after this year.
Oh, okay. All right. I guess I can see that.
I mean, it doesn't seem like that's possible, does it? That he's a junior already. But I think that's a concern. And I think that, I think Tennessee wants 2 slot receivers, but I think they're pretty comfortable with the Squirrel. But I was just a little bit surprised with Thornton and people speaking of highly as him, because we got pretty down. But if he's the comeback player of the year, pardon me, that's good news for Tennessee, Caleb.
Oh, that's great news for Tennessee if Thornton's comeback player of the year. And look, you guys remember how high I was on Thornton last year? I did it without a lot of evidence. I took a leap of faith, and then I was off the train. I've been so schizophrenic with Thornton, it's crazy. But they, Jay, looking back, they moved him to wideout before he got hurt towards the end of last year. And then he caught that touchdown pass right before season-ending injury. That was him playing wideout. That wasn't him playing in the slot. The touchdown pass he caught from Joe Milton against Missouri. And honestly, maybe, and also he was banged up last year. And with those two things combined with the better quarterback throwing him the ball, another year in the system, could we be looking at Dont'e Thornton as the number 2 receiver behind Brew McCoy, like the second best receiver in this rotation?
I think that's the goal. And this post by Travis, Squirrel hasn't done anything spectacular, really. He's constantly underrunning deep balls. Well, we could debate on whether or not those balls are overthrown. I think this is a big year for Squirrel.
A lot of people underran deep balls last year, guys. Give him a break.
Travis, I think you're being overly nice there. But Squirrel, Caleb, to me, this is a big, big year for him, because if you look back at what he did in year 1, everybody got excited about him because he had a name that Johnny Knoxville would kill for. He caught 30 passes for 481 yards. He caught 64 passes for 764 yards. But that was in a different type of offense. He didn't look as explosive because Tennessee didn't throw it down the field. This is a big year for him in making money in the NFL.
It's a huge year for him. Squirrel White has to actually step up this year, and we'll see if he does. But sounds like they think he do, and it sounds like they think he will, and it also sounds like it sounds like they have a lot of faith in this receiving unit. It also sounds like, from what you're talking about, Dave, then the more I read into it, that maybe they already went into last year with a very lack of faith in the passing game.
I'm gonna get myself in trouble with the Joe Milton comments again, but yes, they did not have a great feel for last year's passing game heading into the season. But I think they've got a much better feel for this upcoming season. Also coming up on the program. First, though, who would you take for the comeback player of the year? Because I want to give you a couple of other candidates. I would go Elijah Simmons, the defensive tackle, because of the injuries that he suffered last year. He's always had nagging injuries, so it would be an incredible comeback. I would also go with Andre Kurig at left guard, who I think got taken aback by the offense a little bit and couldn't even hold on to a starting job. And those are probably my two that I would go with off the top of my head, because there's not a lot of comebacks in the secondary. There's not a lot of returnees in the secondary, Caleb.
No, there's not. There's not a lot of people. That's a very good point. There's not a lot of comebacks or returnees in the secondary. Yeah, Keenan Peele, Brew McCoy, and Dont'e Thornton are probably the top three, though, for comeback player of the year.
I didn't mention any of the injured guys, so I'm a total idiot. Yeah, those two that you just mentioned, Peely and Thornton or McCoy, given that they were injured, would be better selections. I was just talking about on-field play.